It's time to take a ride on the Steelers Afternoon Drive with our co-hosts, Alan Saunders and Zachary Smith.
Welcome into another Steelers Afternoon Drive. I'm Zachary Smith. That is Alan Saunders. Alan, how are we doing?
Good.
Steelers 0-0. Everybody in the league 0-0. Reset. Clean slate for everybody.
Everyone except Drake starts today 0-0. That man's gonna be wearing an L for quite some time. Everyone else, 0-0.
You know what I did enjoy about Drake, just in this like recent Drake Kendrick stuff, is Drake showing up to that concert and he just had like smoke or steam, whatever, coming out of his jacket where he had like the bullet holes or whatever. Like, I mean, way overdoing it. But I was like, this is hilarious. Like, I'm finding humor in it more than anything else. So I really enjoyed that aspect of it.
Yeah.
And Kendrick having Serena Williams
You know
be a part of the performance.
You know who's taking an L today? The Philadelphia Department of Sanitation. They're also
brother.
Also 0-1 on this fine day.
I'm guessing those afternoon drives aren't going quite as well as ours or many other people's in the country.
It's resembling GTA. That's all I
got. What did we make of the Super Bowl? I'm assuming that you watched the game, yeah. So what did you make of the Super Bowl? Anything that you kind of found interesting about it? Because I would say, even if you figured that Philadelphia was going to win this game, I don't think that many people saw it going the direction that it did.
First of all, let's cut the brass tacks, the important stuff. Where did you watch the game? Who were you with? And what was the snack situation like?
So this is the third straight year that we've done this. My friend Jordan DeFigio hosts the Super Bowl every year. And at the beginning of the NFL playoffs, it starts out as a food bracket. So the two teams that play each other, you're pulling food that is, synonymous with that location going against the other location. So
good matchup here.
Yeah, well, okay, but like the problem is this just happened 2 years ago. The same matchup. Okay. So like 2 years ago, she did burnt ends for Kansas City and she did Philly cheesesteaks for Philadelphia, obviously. Now, this year, being that she wanted to go a little bit of a different direction, went with pulled pork for Kansas City, and she just had soft pretzels as Philly. But here's the thing. We got there and she way undersold what this was going to be. They were like pretzel balls, essentially, but they were very massive, and it had Philly cheesesteak stuff in the pretzels. So shout out to Jordan. Really enjoyed it. I was gonna say, part of me was a little bit disappointed from a food perspective and football perspective that we didn't get Buffalo, because it would have been wings for Buffalo. And at the beginning of the playoffs, I would have thought pizza, Detroit was what pizza would have been, was going to be there as well. But I'll be honest, after eating the pulled pork and the cheesesteak stuffed pretzels, I was okay with the matchup being what it was.
Yeah. Nothing that extravagant. Went over to my buddy's house. Me and my daughter, my wife is under the weather, so she stayed home. But just had a full spread: pizza, some chicken nuggets, some shrimp. So I made these little pepperoni bites that my mom used to make when we were kids, and Tyler specifically was like, "Hey, can you make those things your mom used to make?" So I made those. They're big. And I tried some little Italian sandwich thing that I saw on Instagram that looked good. So I made those as well. It's a good time. And easy, not one of those games where you're stressed to stay up late and watch the end. Like if you needed to check out at the end of this one, everybody got to work on time that really wanted to get to work on time today. I'll say that.
I actually left Jordan's before the end of the game, and it had nothing to do with me not wanting to see Kenny Pickett take snaps, but I did miss that taking place. But anyways, I had a good time. It was a good time, and no three-peat for the Kansas City Chiefs, so that streak stays alive of not having one since, I believe, the Lakers, right, are the last team to three-peat in any sport. It's obviously very rare to happen at all, but so enjoyed it. I hope everybody did as well. But like we said, kind of a clean slate now for everybody. Is it a clean slate for Grady Brown, Alan? Steelers defensive backs coach contract is up. Do we think that he's going to be back with the organization, but in a different role? Because, like, Gerald Alexander coming back, I know there was a lot of conversation about that. Like, is it both, or is he taking the spot of Grady Brown? What do we make of this?
I'm not really sure. I would think that Grady's contract being up and Gerald Alexander being hired for that job certainly isn't a great sign. I don't know. And we had talked like about the possibility of the Steelers adding, like a senior defensive assistant or something like that to that side of the staff. But I think you and I were kind of in lockstep on this, like with TA already being a secondary guy. If they were going to hire someone like that, it would be better served to have that person be someone with a front seven influence. And the other thing, it's kind of taken away from this game that I didn't really talk about this morning. No blitzes for the Philadelphia Eagles. And so, like, I don't know. I think partially in my mind, it's interesting because a lot of the reaction I saw on social media from this game was like, the lesson I took away is that the Steelers need to fire Mike Tomlin immediately. And I'm like, I kind of it's the opposite. I mean, like, this is all Tomlin's ideas, like executed slightly better and with way better personnel. But like I mean, the Eagles did a lot of the same things the Steelers did all year on defense and just completely shut down the Kansas City Chiefs.
And from an identity standpoint, like, want to be, like, certainly they're not good enough to be that, but this is what the Steelers aspire to be, is what the Eagles are. Run the ball 56% of the time, most in the NFL by far, despite people saying that the Steelers are behind in times because they want to run the football. The best team in football, the new Super Bowl champions, run the football far and away more than anybody else. And from a defensive standpoint, like you said, it's easy not to have to blitz when you got the defensive front that they do. Jalen Carter is a game wrecker. Milton Williams making a name for himself too with a couple sacks. I mean, that's a player to watch
too. Pending free agent Milton Williams.
Same with Josh Sweat.
His agent want to know. To start the offseason. We picked some 0-1s. Milton Williams agent want to know.
Yes, Josh Sweat, also a pending free agent, had 2 sacks in that game last night. But Milton Williams, DB actually threw him out there as a name to watch for the Steelers. That would certainly be interesting. I have no idea what that contract is going to look like. Obviously looking for a much larger role because he's kind of like, I don't want to say like a late bloomer, but I feel like kind of just bursting onto the scene in terms of people figuring out who he is. And he can kind of get lost in that shuffle when you look at that Philly front.
Yeah, well, I think that's part of the thing that people need to understand when the Steelers are taking this path is that, like, it's going to take a long time. Like, even if you hit on the draft picks, and you're not going to hit on them all, trying to build through the offensive line, the Eagles promoted Howie Roseman to general manager in 2010. I mean, they didn't even get to the first of their Super Bowls until 2018? So
17-18 season.
7 seasons later. So, like, even if you do this well, the big guys take a long time to identify which ones are the good ones. I mean, it's just you don't really have any idea in their first and second year whether the Steelers did a good job, a bad job, an awful job, or a Hall of Fame job of drafting the 4 offensive linemen they did so far under Con and Waddle. Like, you just don't know. And so, yeah, I mean, a guy like Milton Williams is in his 4th season and just kind of now became like who he is. Josh Sweat, I mean, sort of like only technically a starter. Brandon Graham like played, I mean, until his injury was the starter there. Like, and they had brought in Bryce Huff to kind of be that guy, but he wasn't. That they brought over from the Jets. So and Nolan Smith, obviously very good second year player, but was a high first round draft pick. You have some expectations for those. I just think it's going to be a while until we find out exactly what all these guys are that the Steelers drafted, and they're probably going to have to spend some more picks on those positions to get to a place that the Eagles are. That's not really surprising. I would be a little surprised if they signed Milton Williams, though. I think they're going to go at defensive line in the draft here heavily, probably twice in this draft.
Yeah, that's fair for sure. You've long been somebody that has given a ton of praise to Howie Roseman, though, And I think that when you look at the way that they've turned over now, like that roster, because you like you mentioned, since 2010 he's been the GM, but you look at the work really since like the 2 Super Bowls, to win 2 Super Bowls within there, 2 different head coaches, 2 different quarterbacks, very different rosters that they've done it in. He's been the consistent at the top. I mean, really can't say. It just seems like I don't even know who the second best GM in football is, but he's very clearly number 1.
Not only is he the best GM in football right now, excluding guys that did it as like head coach / GM, who's the last GM you'd say was better than him? Because I don't even know what that answer is.
Yeah, that's true. I don't know. I'd have to like go down a list and try to make a case for somebody else.
Jerry Jones built those 90s Cowboys as, owner GM. Certainly, deserves some credit there. Bill Polian, built some teams. But like, that was a long time ago. In the modern salary cap free agency era, I don't think there's anybody that's done it better than Howie Roseman. Let me just say it that way.
Yeah, I mean, this list already has him as number 4. So it's pretty crazy.
Newsome is probably the last guy of close to this standing. And honestly, Howie might be beyond that at this point.
Yeah. Right. And obviously still going, long time to add to that resume. I want to bring up a receiver that's been brought up in terms of, hey, once again, we're recycling conversation from last year with Steelers and wide receivers. Deebo Samuel certainly looks like he's going to get a fresh start. I don't know. First off, I want to ask you if it's just being painted this way, you feel like they're kind of making it seem like it's his decision, but it's really them wanting to move on, or what your opinion is on that in terms of the way that this divorce is going to go. But also obviously just talking about the fit of Deebo Samuel in the Steelers. We touched on it last year because, the whole Brandon Ayuk thing, but the Steelers had also asked about Deebo Samuel within that conversation. So what do we make of this?
I mean, I think like this is very different than Brandon Ayuk. Let's compare those two first and foremost. Like Ayuk was very steadfast in saying that he wanted to stay in San Francisco. The 49ers just weren't offering him the contract he felt like he deserved, that he needed to stay. And then when they said, hey, we're not going to do that, then he had a decision to make, whether he wanted to leave to go get the contract or not. And it seems like they eventually kind of met pretty close to in the middle, and he decided to stay in San Francisco for what they were offering. This feels very different. This feels mostly like the 49ers saying, hey, go take a hike. We don't think we can afford you. We're not even going to bother to engage you in contract discussions. If you can make a deal that makes sense for us, see you later. And so in terms of just comparing those two situations, very, very different. The 49ers always had a lot of leverage in the Alex situation. We actually talked a lot last summer about us feeling like they kind of underplayed their hand, that they could have been if the 49ers had been stronger from the beginning, it probably would have never got as far as it did. In this case, the 49ers are basically saying we don't want you anymore. They're not even attempting to have any leverage over the process. They're just ready to move on. I don't think it's, when they signed Ayuk, I think that was pretty clearly in the cards in the future at some point anyway. But then I think him having a downturn in production last season, the drops coming up out of nowhere, really seemingly, some sideline stuff that wasn't great. And I think it all adds up to a pretty easy picture for the 49ers to say, you know what, let's just call it a day and move on. So I don't think very similar to that. I do think it's fairly similar to a lot of the things we talked about with the Rams and Cooper Kupp. And it's an older guy. There's questions about the scheme fit. There's questions about his ability to stay healthy. The great season in your memory is now 3 years in the rearview mirror. Is that coming back? And so in those regards, pretty similar. But when we both talked about Cooper Kupp, I think we were both pretty much on the same page that we were kind of out on that idea, that we didn't really love the thought of bringing Cooper Kupp. I'm a little different about Deebo Samuel, but I want your thoughts first on, are you the same thing, or does this feel different to you?
I'm a little bit different. And if it was a system where it was like, just give me the better player, I would probably lean Cup, but specifically for what the Steelers are looking for and dropping one into Arthur Smith's system, I would lean Deebo Samuel. And that's, even taking into consideration that I don't feel like he is the same player that he was a few seasons ago. To be honest with you, you didn't even mention it, but I have some questions about like his conditioning. Like he looks like he's put on weight. So I don't know. I think there's
somebody in the comments on our website said like, why would Arthur Smith want Deebo Samuel? Can he play tight end? Sort of joking Arthur Smith's like obsession with playing multiple tight ends, and I'm like, buddy, Deebo Samuel is a tight end. Like I don't know, like he's
running like more so a running back than a receiver too. Like the way that you would get him the ball, I think is the reason that I'd probably be more on board with it. With that being said, I know that there was conversation last year about like pick 51 is why it didn't end up getting done or why the conversation stopped or whatever. I think you got to be talking like 4th, 5th round pick at this point for him, right? I mean, for it to make sense, and at that point, that's why I'm on board with it. The assumed acquisition cost plus the fit, even while acknowledging that he is a diminishing asset.
Yeah, I agree. I also think I look at his game and I think not only does it fit the Steelers scheme better, it looks to me like a playing style that will age a little bit more gracefully than Cooper Kupp because he's not relying on athleticism to win like Kupp is. You know what I mean? Like, and he's 3 years younger. And so I just think like if you're comparing those two available players, I think the scheme fits better. And Samuel's played more games recently. I mean, they both had injuries, but Kupp's have been more substantial. He's missed more games. And I just think Samuel is the kind of player that I always think bigger, stronger, tougher, lasts longer. Skill, speed, finesse. Though when those guys start to go downhill, it goes down fast. And so I don't think Deebo Samuel is ever going to be the player he was in 2021 again, but I think you can get a pretty useful player. I'm with you. It would have to be kind of like a day 3 pick for me to even be interested in this. And I think the real question mark is if they just make the trade straight up, 49ers don't keep any salary. Steelers owe them $15 million for this year. I don't think that's outrageous. They can certainly afford it. And if they need to move some of it around for salary cap purposes, they have the ability to do that too. So I think that's okay. But is Deebo okay with playing out the last year of his contract, or does he want an extension? And if he wants an extension, what does he do? What are his specific demands right now? And I think that's the part of this that is for me a big unknown, because I don't really want to get into like a multi-year contract extension for that guy right now with where the Steelers are. It's just like, it feels like they're one more disappointing year from blowing this whole thing up. Like, what do I want with a 30-year-old wide receiver on a multi-year contract at that point?
Yeah, and the thing with Kupp that I think is interesting too, and I'm glad that you brought up this, like the way that his game's going to age. I felt like best case scenario, he would come in here and just because of like the type of player he was, be kind of like a target vacuum, a la like Deontay Johnson in 21. Just catch like a ton of passes and be productive from in that way, move the chains on 3rd down. But like you look at last year, the Rams tried to get him the ball on 3rd down. He had 17 catches and only converted 7 first downs on 3rd and 4th down this year. Like the way the role that I would envision him in, he wasn't good at in a much better system in LA. So I don't know. I don't like, he's better than what they have on the roster or had on the roster last year.
Both of those guys are better than what they had on the roster.
Sure. But I would be aiming higher.
Yeah, I don't think any of this like fixes their wide receiver position. This is just what they should have done last year. Like that's like if it's acquiring Deebo Samuel for a 4th round pick, it's just what they should have done last year, and still does really nothing to address the fact that they don't know what they have long term in George Pickens. If they want to keep him, if they're even going to be able to keep him for this year, if they don't want him for long term, etc. And the total lack of ability of everybody else on the roster in terms of outside play. So I mean, I think, but you can look at what Arthur Smith has done with bigger wide receivers and wide receiver tight end hybrids, and look, I think there's plenty of space for a Deebo Samuel in this offense. It certainly should not be wide receiver's done. Like it's not that kind of move.
Right. Yeah, and that's honestly, I don't know that I'd say what I'd be concerned about, but again, if that were the case, 2 years in a row, they're pressing the wrong button and just totally misjudging the wide receiver position.
Let me throw this one out there. Just throwing it out there, okay?
Yep.
So the idea would be Steelers going to trade like a day 3 pick, for Deebo, which I think is fair value. Keenan Allen went for 4th last year. I think that's fairly comparable. Here's the thing. The 49ers have 2/3, 3/4, and 3/7 in this year's draft.
Yeah.
So, like, what do they want with another day 3 draft pick? Like, they could draft all those guys. They're not going to make the team.
Mm-hmm.
Would you say like Pickens for Samuel and one of those thirds? Would you do that?
Getting a third back from San Fran?
Yeah.
In this deal?
Like,
yes,
it does not,
because the reason being, I think if you were trading George straight up, I think, I mean, I know that there's probably people that are aiming higher than this. I think a 3rd round is probably what you're getting back.
like a third plus, like a day 3 or like a throwaway player. Yeah, probably.
So you're just swapping that with having Deebo Samuel on the roster, so you at least have a complementary piece. Again, that can't be, the guy at the top of the depth chart that you're asking to replicate what you're losing with George, but you do that some other way, but you're still getting Deebo on the roster. So yeah, I'd do it.
Yeah. I just remember last year when the 49ers were trading Ayuk, and a big part of the holdup was they wanted another wide receiver coming back the other way. The Steelers weren't willing to trade George Pickens then for Ayuk. I wonder, the 49ers wanted him. They wanted George Pickens.
Now, my goodness, if San Fran could rein him in there, Pickens, Ayuk, Jennings, Pearsall, Cowing, that's a good group.
Yeah, for sure. But I don't know. I think that's like, I just look at this. I'm like, if I'm the 49ers, like, what do I want a 4th round pick for? Like a fourth round pick. Like, they're not, they wouldn't all make their team. Like, I don't know what, I mean, maybe they would prefer like a 26 pick. Maybe you could do something like that. I don't know, but throw that out there.
Somebody DM'd us both the same question actually, so we definitely got the next question here. Nicholas Sarentau, he's a real estate agent. I can tell you that's in his bio. Anyways, Nick says, love the show, you guys are awesome, have the best content. Quick question, do you guys think that Tomlin does not want to add big name coaches to the staff because he doesn't want to give up control? Can the Steelers ever get over the hump with Tomlin's dictatorship?
Yeah, I don't really know where this comes from. Maybe you have more insight on.
Nick is definitely not the first one to have this opinion, though.
I know. Like, I don't think that Mike Tomlin is at all like dictatorial in terms of the realm of NFL coaches. I'd probably put him in the bottom half of the league in that regard. Like, I just, at some level, every head coach gets what they want. Like, there's no such thing as like a head coach that does not have full control over the product underneath them. They all get what they want. But I don't think Tomlin even really, he's never even once installed the defense that he came up coaching. Like, he just took what the Steelers already had and was like, yeah, all right, we'll just keep rolling with that. Like, I don't know. Like, I don't see that as, I don't see where that comes from.
I don't know how it could or should or would be different, but I think it comes from like a lack of transparency in terms of what the order of operations or flow of how the organization runs actually is. And I think people just point to, the longest tenured guy that's, just been the one consistent through this time and say, there's no way that he doesn't have a large say in literally everything. And he's in control of everything.
Well, yeah, I think so. Okay, I can understand that because for a lot of, like, Mike Tomlin speaks for a lot of people on a day-to-day basis in terms of when his subordinates or his superiors screw something up, Mike Tomlin goes out there and takes the blame for it. And when, and so like he's kind of the spokesman, right? For everyone's decisions. Doesn't mean they're all his. He's just the one that's out there every week taking the bullets. And so I think that's like, maybe that's part of it, is that because like he'll say like, yeah, that was my decision, or I'm responsible for it, whether it was his or not. Like he's just going to take responsibility. He's going to absorb all the responsibility. but that doesn't mean he's out there like micromanaging his coaches or, I don't see that at all, really, to be honest. Now, like we've talked about the idea that if you're a defensive coach, you say you're a potential defensive coordinator, you're going to get a lot more freedom under a guy like Sean McVay than you would Mike Tomlin, because the head coach's area of expertise is going to be opposite yours. The defensive coordinator for an offensive head coach and the offensive coordinator for a defensive head coach are going to be a lot, I don't want to say important is the right, but they're just going to be a lot more independent than a coordinator who is serving Shanahan hasn't even named an offensive coordinator. He just does the job and says, well, I don't even have one. And there's lots of those guys that have an offensive coordinator, like Stefanski has had offensive coordinators, but he's still called all the plays. There's like varying levels of how independent you are with that title, but that's kind of just the natural part of football. I don't think there's any.
So let me then. So because of Tomlin's background being the defensive side, you would think it would be the inverse of that, where like the offensive coordinator does have a little bit more free reign, right?
Yeah, I mean, I think certainly Arthur Smith has had a good amount of free reign. Maybe not.
Well, okay, so that's why I think maybe this question is off the heels of, we talked about it too, and we brought it up, and I talked in a negative light in terms of this, but the whole scrapping the game plan before the Bengals thing, where they admitted to doing so, and Tomlin admitted to doing so, like that to me, what I said was a red flag. Now, I don't know if that's, how often that has happened throughout the course of Tomlin's tenure with his offensive coordinators being that hands-on and doing things like that, but certainly wouldn't have thought that would happen with Arthur Smith. And if the offensive coordinator is going to be, and I mean, this is just now going through the process, and I don't know that it makes sense to continue to bring up old things here, but like having a guy like Matt Canada in that position to begin with, was obviously a mistake. But even just the offensive coordinator position in general that they haven't really hit on, and we'll see if Arthur Smith changes that history. But anyways, not to go off track, but
yeah,
just
I
the original point there.
Smith had a lot more sort of independence than Canada did, for sure.
Okay.
Like Tomlin was fairly heavily involved in the offense when Canada was there, and more so than before. And also that did coincide with Terrell Austin taking over the defense, and I think Austin has had a greater free reign with the defense than Keith Butler did. I mean, Keith Butler, when he retired, was immediately kind of complaining about Mike Tomlin calls all the plays, and I haven't seen that over the last couple of years. I mean, certainly he does call some plays, and he is a big part of the defensive game plan and things like that. Mm-hmm. But I think over the last couple of years, TA has been calling most of the plays, and that's something that hasn't always happened. So, I think there's definitely.
It's been even more of a step back for Tomlin recently. Like, people think it might be going the other direction where he's been even more hands-on, but with the inclusion of Arthur Smith as the offensive coordinator, TA calling plays.
In the time that I've been on the beat, like this past year was about like the least hands-on I've seen Mike Tomlin involved in his football team. Just in terms of like looking over the shoulder of coaches and coordinators. That's not to say like he wasn't doing his job. I just think there's been times where if you look at kind of the traditional role of the offensive coordinator, defensive coordinator, et cetera, the head coach has been filling some of that at times. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
And I didn't really see that much this year.
Okay. I'm not going to pretend to be in the know with stuff that I do not know. So that's why I'm just like one of the listeners right now, trying to figure out how the, delegation of responsibilities goes. But okay, good stuff.
Just I guess to answer the question, maybe, I don't think that Tomlin doesn't want to add a big name coach to his staff. I don't think that's something that he's not because of the name anyway. I don't think that part of it is something. I mean, Terrell Austin had been a defensive coordinator twice before the Steelers hired him as an assistant. Mm-hmm. Brian Flores had been a head coach before the Steelers hired him. Mike Munchak had been a head coach before the Steelers hired him. Dick LeBeau, Tomlin didn't hire Dick LeBeau, but he kept him on the staff, had been a head coach, was a defensive coordinator under Tomlin. Like, I don't see, I mean, is he going to hire I don't know, like who would be the highest profile possible hire right now? I don't know, but like John Gruden, no, probably not. But like, I think, you know, I have not seen a lack
Antonio
of.
Pierce possible?
I think there, yeah, I think that's possible. I think there has been a resistance to expanding the coaching staff. Now that has happened, and a lot of times when teams hire guys as that like veteran coach, it's kind of a cushy job, right? Like they don't get that kind of like in the trenches, you're the inside linebackers coach job. You get this like, you just kind of show up and help out role. That and that's something that experienced quote unquote big name coaches might enjoy. And the Steelers have been very hesitant to add those kind of roles to the staff. And I don't really understand why that is, but that isn't just a big name thing. If you go back to the Grady Brown conversation, it would be very easy to keep Grady Brown on the staff and name him defensive passing game coordinator and just move along. They don't want to do that. In fact, when Art had his press conference at postseason, he's like, yeah, we're open to changing basically anything and everything except for more coaches. We don't think that's the answer.
I know.
So if Art's saying that, I don't think that's a Tomlin thing. I think for whatever reason, that's a Steelers thing. If it's just philosophy, if it's money, I don't know what, but that seems to be an organizational thing more than a Tomlin thing.
Absolutely. I fully agree. Good. We actually got a lot of questions we didn't get to. I'm telling you right now, we're already past 30 minutes, but tomorrow it's going to be a big Thomas Brocious day. That's tomorrow's teaser, Alan.
Oh, all right.
We got a lot of stuff for Thomas Brocious.
Thomas Brocious.
Yes.
I like it.
Big day for Thomas Brocious on a Tuesday. I'll try to figure out a way to make that sound better. A name for a Tuesday, Thomas Tuesday. We'll figure it out. Anyways, Alan, until tomorrow, tell the people they can find you.
At @Saunders_PGH on X, Instagram, TikTok, and Blue Sky. PGH Steelers Now is the site's account, SteelersNow.com. Go there and read the words so I can get paid. Like, subscribe, hit that bell for notifications. Here on the YouTube platform, we are over 15,000 subs submitted. Did it on Friday. I was, of course, not here. You and DB were the ones.
Yes, it happened. It was a little bit anticlimactic in that way, but either way.
I wish I could have been here, but was just getting in from my lengthy journey on Friday afternoon. But really appreciative of everyone who's subscribed and keep it rolling. We don't need to stop. We keep pushing, keep moving that ball forward.
Yeah, before we know it, we'll be at 20K. But for the time being, we are at Hines Ward rookie number 1,000 and Eli Rogers subscribers. So it's 15,017.
15,000 and Trenton Thompson. There you go. Recently retired Trenton Thompson.
Wait, did he retire?
Yeah, from that
next. Wow, dang, that's crazy. That's unfortunate. I really hope we're not going down that path with rookie Ryan Watts. I actually had a conversation with him. Reached out to him like last week, just to check in with him and see how he's doing. But he's in good spirits. We'll see how that goes. But I didn't even realize I missed that with Trenton Thompson retiring. What a shame.
Yeah.
Hit us in the comments. Keep those questions coming throughout the offseason. Hear your thoughts on what we talked about, more topics for us to talk about. As Alan said, like, subscribe, hit that notification bell here. If you're listening somewhere else, leave us a 5-star review and subscribe over there. You can find us Apple, Spotify, wherever you get your podcast from. Just search Steelers Afternoon Drive. They can find me everywhere, Zachary Smith, PGH. For Alan Saunders and myself, thanks for jumping in. Take another ride on the Steelers Afternoon Drive.